Hey, and if any of the kids in the room want to join Miss Linda at the back table, you'll be able to spend our time together while I'm talking. I still need your attention sometimes. So kids, you remember that we have like this call and response thing going, so we need to hear some volume from you guys back there. But if you guys want to go back and be able to make a friendship bracelet to talk about what we're talking about this morning, you're more than welcome to head back, grab a snack, grab a seat in the back of the room. Every month we do this time where it's family worship together, and I appreciate you guys worshiping through the noise. I know that some of you, maybe it felt a little bit off to have kids shaking off beat, but that's just what worship looks like in a family with many generations, right? Anyone who has had kids know that plans don't go to plan when you have kids. So it is good to be able to worship together, whatever that sounds like. It's a beautiful noise to the Lord. And as we gather together today, we're finishing up this series on restoration, on being restored, on this idea that God doesn't just leave you how you are, but always wants to restore you to how you should be. And kids, we've been talking about this idea together, right? Where a few weeks ago we talked about how even when we mess up, God helps. There it is. See, some of you. Even when we mess up, and I feel like I actually preached this sermon not too long ago. Like, forgiveness is right? Like, do you feel like I talked about this? As I was writing the sermon this week, I was like, man, I feel like I talked about this. But there's a reason why we're talking about this again, and it's because you need forgiveness again. It's because you mess up again. Like, the reason why we talk about forgiveness again is because God forgives us again. And so this week, we're going to focus on, kids, even when we mess up again. Oh, come on. Even if you're just a kid at heart, you can shout out God helps if you want. Even when we mess up again, that's just the reality of our life. And hopefully over time, God will work in your heart to make you better, to make it so you don't make as many mistakes. But also, kids, I want you to look around the room for a minute. And I want you to look at someone who, like an older person in the room. You can even like spend this moment and try and find who you think is the oldest person in the room. No one else take offense at this. That is the person who has just had the most time in their life to be forgiven by God. That yes, over time, God will perfect you and work in your heart to weed things out, but also you're still going to be blind to some things. You're still going to mess up again, and we know that even when we mess up again, and the longer you live, the more time you have to get God's forgiveness. And today we're going to focus on this guy named Peter. And if any of you know Peter, Peter is like this gung-ho dude. Like, Peter is always game. Peter is the kind of guy that I feel like if you were like, hey, Peter, we're going cliff jumping today. He's like, let's go, bet. Like, where's the cliff? Is there water below? I don't even care. Let's jump. Like, let's go for this. And there's this time when Jesus' disciples are gathered together, and Jesus knows that he's about to die, and he's like, you are all going to betray me. You're all going to leave me. You're all going to say you don't know me. And Peter's like, nah, not me, man. Ride or die. I got your back. Like, you're my bro, Jesus. I got you. There's no circumstance where I abandon you. And Jesus is like, no, even you. Like, you're not going to follow me in this. And Peter is like, no, not me. Anybody else. Like, everybody else would be like, yeah, I don't care about this Jesus guy. No, like, no, I'm Peter. Like, I am following you. Whatever you do, I'm going to do. I got your back, Jesus. And you guys probably know some of the story, right? That what ends up happening is that Jesus is taken and he is tried. And while he's being tried, while he's on trial, 3 different times people approach Peter and are like, don't I know you? Like, aren't you one of Jesus' followers? I've seen you with that Jesus guy. And 3 times Peter's like, nah, I don't know that guy. Jesus? Never heard of him. I might have one of those faces that looks like a disciple, but I don't know that Jesus guy. 3 times Peter, to like perfect strangers, while Jesus is on trial, says, I don't even know him. I don't even know who he is. And again, you guys know the story. That Jesus is convicted and tried, that he is killed and dies, but does not stay dead, but comes back. And when Jesus comes back, in the Gospel of John that we're going to look at today, there's 3 different times where he meets up with the disciples. And this 3rd time that we're going to look at today, Peter is like out fishing on a boat, like he is returned to life. He is out fishing on a boat, and he's just fishing, and he sees Jesus, the risen Lord, on the shore, and Jesus is like, come on in. And they bring their fish in, and they have this like really sweet moment where Jesus and disciples, after Jesus' death, share like a breakfast together. They just like sit on the beach and eat fish for breakfast, which is not my personal breakfast choice, but like what a wonderful little moment that they got to sit together, to laugh together, to hang out together as friends. But you have to imagine there is this weight laying on Peter's shoulders, right? this weight of, I know what I did to that guy. You felt that relational weight before, right? When you know you hurt someone you love and you're just like waiting for the opportunity to not feel that weight anymore. And so Jesus takes him aside and they have this conversation in John 21, verses 15 through 19. And it's there that we read this. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." So Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he answered him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Take care of my sheep." And a third time, Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John," and I know he's calling him Simon, but his name is Peter here, "Do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." So Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." This is the word of the Lord. It's weird, right, that Jesus says, feed some sheep, right? Like, there's something about Jesus. Kids, I don't know if you've read this. When we talk about Jesus, there are times when Jesus says something, and you're like, Jesus, what are you talking about? And this idea, when Jesus says, feed my sheep, here's all he means by that, is that Jesus is saying, take care of people. And so when Jesus says, feed my sheep, all it means when we read that is Jesus is saying, take care of people, because people are the things that Jesus cares most about in the world. And so we have this little conversation where Peter is talking to Jesus. And you guys know this, right? Kids, you guys know that the Bible wasn't originally written in English, right? Maybe some of you grown-ups are just realizing this for the first time, but right? The Bible wasn't originally written in English. English didn't even exist when the Bible was written. A lot of it was written in this language called Greek, and a lot of people, you guys have heard people talk about the different types of love in Greek, right? This is something that Christians are very fond of pointing out, and in this passage, he actually uses two different types of love, and people talk about it a lot, and like a lot of commentaries, there's a lot of pages put towards explaining why they're using two different types of love, and in reality, it probably doesn't matter all that much. But every time Peter answers, "You know that I love you," one of the ways that a different Bible translation translates it, because he uses this friendship type of love, is, "You know that I am your friend." Like Jesus is like, "Do you love me?" And he's like, "You know that I am your friend." And this is not some sort of lesser love. Like, friendship love is a big deal. Does anyone have like a best friend that you've kept for years? Like, friendship love is a real type of love. Like, that is something that matters in your life. Like, that person's opinion can sometimes matter to you more than anyone else's opinion in the world. Like, friendship love is a real love that matters. And Peter, when he answers Jesus, when Jesus asks, "Do you love me?" Peter's like, "You know that I love you. I am your friend." Like, that's how friendship works. Friends love each other. Like, of course I love you, Jesus. And I really enjoy that it uses this friendship word love, because love can be a hard word to define sometimes. Like, love can be really difficult to put your finger on what it looks like to love people. And so with Kidsmen, when we talk about love, a lot of times we use this word friend as a stand-in for what it looks like to love people. Like, if you're going to love people, you treat them like they're your friend. You treat them as a friend, and it's the centerpiece of our faith. Like, faith is friendship with God. And the end goal is that you get to enjoy this forever friendship with him. And yet one of the realities of friendship is when friends are so close, when friends spend so much time together, when friends' words and deeds matter so much to each other, friends almost have more ability to hurt each other than anyone else, don't they? Like, a random passerby on the street could say something to you and it would just roll right off your shoulder. But when a friend says it, you're like, ooh, like that cut. That ran deep. And we don't often talk about Jesus in this idea that, like, if he is our friend, then we also have the ability to hurt him. Like, if there is an actual relationship here, then when Peter did this thing to Jesus, like, Jesus knows that everyone is, like, put yourself in Jesus' shoes for a second. He loves people so much that he came to this earth to live, and those same people are putting him on trial and doing everything they can to kill him. And even his closest friends are nowhere to be seen. And he knows that in the background of what's going on is this guy, Peter, is like, I don't even know Jesus. Like, that's gotta hurt. Normally we talk about Jesus in these terms like he is so great and so mighty that we can't apply these terms of hurt to him, but like, that's gotta hurt Jesus to be in that moment. And when we talk about this idea of Jesus being hurt, like, we put him in this cosmic frame, but if he is our friend, then those things that Peter said must have hurt him. And when we get in those positions where we hurt people, we have this wonderful opportunity with God for forgiveness. And you have this opportunity, and maybe you felt this before in your friendships, that when someone has done something to you, you felt your friendship weaken a little bit. Maybe you felt yourself unconsciously putting up walls towards them. Maybe you felt yourself distancing yourself from your friends because they hurt you so deeply. And the thing that Peter did to Jesus is something that I would imagine for most of us might be warrant to write them off forever. To be like, nah, I'm not your friend anymore. Like, you pretended like you didn't even know me when other people were around. I feel like this is something that only happens in movies. Like, you're watching a high school movie and someone becomes really popular and their old friend is like, hey, what's up? And he's like, I don't even know that guy. Like, maybe this has happened to you, and I can't imagine how deep that hurt is, but I feel like this is something that is one of those nearly unforgivable type feelings. That when they were around someone else, they were like, nah, I don't even know him. And Peter 3 times to perfect strangers, to protect himself, pretended he didn't even know who Jesus was. And yet Jesus offers him forgiveness. And we as Christians can get ourselves tied into knots as we talk about this idea of forgiveness, that it can feel like there's just some cosmic courtroom that you're being declared not guilty in. Or there's some massive naughty nice list that you need God to cross out all your naughty deeds so that only your nice deeds remain. Like, sometimes we can talk about forgiveness like you got called to God's principal's office and you're just trying to like not get in trouble with everything you are. But forgiveness is about more than that. Forgiveness is about restoring the relationship and the friendship that exists. If forgiveness was just about not being in trouble, then Jesus' response would have been very, very different. If forgiveness was just about not being in trouble, then Jesus would have been like, oh yeah, like I get it, I forgive you, but I don't trust you anymore. You have to earn that back. Jesus would have been like, yeah, I forgive you, but like, we're not close anymore. Like, I don't want to hang out. I don't want to spend time with you. But that's not what forgiveness is about here. It's about more than just not being guilty. It's about restoring the friendship. And the difficulty is, a lot of times the way that we practice forgiveness, even the way that Christians practice forgiveness, is not like that, is it? We may forgive the deed, but we don't want to restore the relationship. Like this is like a common phrase, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Because I should have known better to not trust you again. Like we do this when people hurt us, we're like, yes, I forgive you, but you need to earn my trust back. Trust is something that you need to earn back from me. You need to prove yourself worthy for my trust again. And the reality is, trust is never something that's earned. It's always something that's given. Over time, someone may more and more prove themselves to be worthy that you feel more comfortable giving them your trust. But if you think that someone earns your trust, you're fooling yourself. No matter what, you give people your trust. It's a choice that you make. And you can hold on to grudges for like generations and never give back trust, even when a person has done everything they can to earn it. Trust is always, always, always given. And that's what we find that Jesus does, is that he doesn't just forgive him and say, but you got to earn my trust again. He forgives him and he entrusts him with something special. He restores the relationship and the friendship. Not just to be people who aren't at odds anymore, to be people who are going to be close again. And there's a caveat that I shared that maybe you remembered if you were here last time. That's worth sharing again, because we should not let this biblical call to forgiveness become something so simple and simplistic that it becomes like a bumper sticker of just forgive everyone. Like, no, you have complex and difficult circumstances in your life. Don't hear me telling you that, like, since someone routinely hurts you, you need to just keep forgiving them. Like, do not let God's forgiveness become an excuse for enabling someone's wicked habits in your life. Like, if you're in a position where someone is like emotionally or physically or sexually abusing you, restoring the relationship maybe isn't something that needs to happen. Like, do not hear this as an overly simplistic message that makes you feel guilty for being hurt by people who you should be able to trust. If you're in a circumstance where you're continually being bullied, where someone is holding you down, where no matter what you do, you cannot earn your parents' love or respect, then maybe you're in a position where trust might not be able to be given again, or maybe not be able to be given right now. And those circumstances are way more prevalent than we give voice to. Like those things happen and assuredly happen in the lives of people in this room or watching this live stream, that you may be in positions now or have been positions in the past where you are being abused. Do not let this be something that makes you feel guilty for being hurt by people. That is not your fault. But even while those situations happen, they are the vast minority of things that will happen in your life. Most things that people do to you, even though they may hurt or may cut deep, are forgivable offenses. Like that relationship has not gone too far that it cannot be fixed. We know that even when we mess up again, God helps. Oh, come on, kids, man. I know that you're building bracelets, but you're better than that. We know that even when we mess up again, and we can find ourselves in places where we can give that trust again. And when Jesus forgives Peter, he does. He trusts him again, doesn't he? He entrusts him with the one thing that he cares about most in the world: caring for people. Like, this is the reason why Jesus came to the earth. This is probably, honestly, the reason why Jesus made all people, is so that he could share his love with them. It's the reason why he came. It's the reason why he died. It's the reason why he comes again. It's the reason why he forgives us. Like, everything that Jesus does is all about caring for people. And yet, to this person who has just hurt Jesus, who has just shown himself to be unworthy, Jesus gives the monumental task of, if you love me, care for people. If you are my friend, then take over the mission that I have been living my life for, in loving people well, in feeding my sheep, in caring for people. And it's not a test. You guys have been here before, right? Like somebody hurt you and you gave them a task, but really you were just watching to see if they would mess up. Come on. Am I the only bad person in the room? You guys have done this before, right? Like you needed them to do the task to prove that they were worth your trust again. This is not a test, because if it was, I'm telling you right now, Peter would have failed it. Like, Peter does a lot of things really well, but there actually ends up being this big church fight where Peter screws up loving people well. He is only allowing people into the church who dress like him, who act like him, who maybe have the same background as him, who will worship in the same way that he worships. Like Peter is making new Christians feel like they don't belong or they're not good enough because they're not willing to follow some rules that he likes following. That they're not willing to worship or connect with God in the ways that he's used to worship or connecting with God. Like, it's not that Peter just messed up this one time and then like went forward, never messing up again. No, like Peter messes up again. But we know that even when we mess up again, yes, well done, Bryson. But even when we mess up again, and when Peter messes up again, God doesn't like take the mission from him. God isn't like, well, that was the last straw. Fool me twice, shame on you. No, when we look at Jesus' forgiveness, when someone asks Jesus about how many times you should forgive, he's like 7 times, 7 times, or like 70 times, 70 times, or like, just keep forgiving people. Like, why are you asking me this question? Just keep forgiving people. Do whatever you can to make sure that you keep forgiving people. Like, this isn't like little bunny foo-foo hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice, popping on the head. Magic fairy comes down and said, I'll give you 3 chances. And if you don't do it right, I'm going to turn you into a goon. Like, no. God doesn't just give you 3 chances. He gives you chance upon chance upon chance upon chance. Like, you are a person who has been forgiven a lot. Like, kids, look around the room. If you see an old person, that's a person who's been forgiven a lot because they've had more chances to get God's forgiveness. Jesus keeps forgiving you. And it might be hard for us to not just look at other people, but to look at ourselves. But that's the reality of your life, is that you get God's forgiveness again, is that God does not allow your past to hold him back from being your friend. And that is forgiveness that I've gotten, even though I'm preaching. Like, that's forgiveness that your parents have gotten. That's forgiveness that your kids get. That's forgiveness that Pastor, Dr., Reverend David Goebel gets. Like we all receive that forgiveness from God over and over and over and over again in our lives. As long as I am a broken person, as long as I wait on this side of eternity for God to remake me new forever with him, I will need his forgiveness again, even though I don't deserve it. And the best part about faith is that I know that I'll get it. Like, I know that he will trust me again, that he will welcome me back into his arms as his friend. And so if you're willing, I'd like to do something that maybe is a little bit weird today, because these words that Jesus speaks to Peter are words that he also speaks to you. Because if you're being honest with yourself, you have denied Jesus more than 3 times in your life, right? Like there have been more than 3 times where there's been that awkward silence where you knew you could mention Jesus and you're like, nah, I'll let this one pass. There have been more than 3 times that by your actions, you were uncomfortable doing the thing you knew you should do because you worried about what the people around you would think. There have been times in your life where you've maybe even directly said, I don't know him. That Jesus guy? Nah, I don't know that Jesus guy. And wherever, like you've been in a position where you have denied Jesus in your life. And the longer you've lived, you've probably had more of those opportunities in your life. And yet the words that he speaks to Peter are the same words that he speaks to you. And so if you're willing, I would like just a moment to do a call and response of those words. Of Jesus saying, I'm going to say it, I'm not Jesus. I have the look, but I'm not Jesus. But when I say it, know that they're Jesus' words to you of the question of like, do you love Jesus? And for you to just be able to say out loud, yes, I am his friend. So I'll say out, do you love Jesus? And I'm going to ask this question 3 times. It may feel repetitive. Deal with it. For you to be able to say, yes, I am his friend. It may feel strange. That's okay. There's power in saying these things out loud. Before we say that, I would love to just take a moment in silence for you to sit with God, to ask him for the forgiveness that Peter probably felt a weight on his shoulder, maybe forgiveness that you feel is a weight on your shoulder right now. Take that moment in silence, and then I'll ask these questions for you. So brothers and sisters, kids and grown-ups, wherever you are, do you love Jesus?
Yes.
Do you love Jesus?
Yes, I am his friend.
You don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to have done everything right in your life. You don't have to even know everything that you want to know about Jesus, but if you even want to love Jesus, do you love Jesus? Know that no matter what you have in your past, that doesn't hold you back from a friendship that you can have with God. Know that you and Jesus, you guys are good now. You probably still need to ask for forgiveness from somebody else. Like I'm certain that you definitely, because I do, need to ask for forgiveness from someone else in your life. But you and Jesus, y'all are good. And he entrusts you again with his mission in this world. The thing that he came to this world for, to love people well, to care for people. A lot of caring for people is just going to be being a friend, just going to be being nice, just going to be showing up. But also a lot of that is going to be not letting their past keep you from being their friend in your future together. A lot of being a friend to people is being able to continue to forgive them. And you'll be in positions where you will be able to loose people from their past and to trust them again. And when you do that, you do something that's Jesus-shaped. You do something that looks like what Jesus did. And when people see that you are not willing to let their past or their mistakes stand in the way of your friendship and your love for them, then they will see your good friendships and glorify your Father in heaven. Let's pray today. God, I am not good at forgiving people all the time, but I know that your Spirit helps. Let us be people deeply aware of the forgiveness that we get from you and people who continue to pour that out on people around us. Lord, let us be a forgiving and loving people that our friends might see you through us. In your name we pray. Amen.